Welcome to our channel. Can you imagine surviving a betrayal that defined your childhood only to confront your past decades later? Today, we'll tell you the story of Daniela, who, after being pushed off a cliff by her parents at the age of 8, reunites with them 28 years later in her luxury boutique. What did she say? How did she seek justice? Discover this gripping tale of survival, success, and redemption. Don't miss it. They pushed me off a cliff when I was 8 years old. 20 years later, they walked into my luxury boutique on the outskirts of Aspen, Colorado, in December 1993. Snow fell softly around a Victorian mansion. 8-year-old Daniela sat by the window of her second-floor bedroom, gazing at the pristine snow piling up in the garden. Only 2 days remained until Christmas. Despite the large Christmas tree decorated in the living room downstairs, she had no memory of decorating it together as a family. Expensive paintings adorned the walls of her room, and antique furniture crowded the space. Everything had been chosen to suit her mother Elizabeth's taste, with no consideration for an 8-year-old girl's preferences. The only thing that brought her comfort was her worn teddy bear resting on her bed. "Miss Daniela, I've brought you some hot chocolate," said the kind voice of Luisana, the maid. The girl turned around. In her 50s, Luisana was the only person in the house who showed Daniela affection. With her neatly combed gray hair and pristine uniform, she moved with a quiet dignity. "Thank you, Luisana." As she accepted the warm drink, Daniela noticed her mother Elizabeth's voice drifting up from downstairs. "Oh yes, of course, I'll be attending the party. I plan to wear my new Chanel. Mrs. Lauren will be there too, so appearances are everything." Her mother's elegant laughter echoed through the house. More conversations about social gatherings as always. To her father, Jonathan, an executive at an investment firm, and her mother, a socialite, spending time with their daughter was merely an afterthought. Maintaining the image of a perfect family in Aspen's high society was their primary concern. Her father held weekly meetings with clients at the golf club, while her mother served on boards for various charities. The sterling name unfailingly appeared in the social pages of the newspaper. Luisana noticed the lonely expression on the girl's face and gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "Would you like to make a gingerbread house with me tomorrow? Making Christmas sweets was so much fun last year, wasn't it?" Daniela's eyes lit up at those words. The memory of building the candy house with Luisana last Christmas while her parents were in Hawaii was one of her most cherished. However, she had no idea that joy would be short-lived. Dark shadows were already looming over the mansion. Every night, screams could be heard coming from her father Jonathan's study. Behind the heavy door adorned with expensive wooden panels, her father's anguished voice would seep through. "What do you mean the deadline has passed?" His face twisted as he listened to the voice on the other end of the phone. Piles of bills cluttered his desk. The ominous red letters of overdue notices cast dark shadows under the study's light. A failed real estate investment after the E-Man crisis, $3 million in debt. Her father had invested heavily in what he believed was a promising redevelopment project, but the market collapse had turned everything to dust. Now, threatening letters from debt collectors arrived day after day. Her mother Elizabeth drowned herself in increasingly extravagant purchases as if trying to escape reality. New handbags, jewelry, fur coats, haute couture dresses costing over $100,000 each, all hanging in her closet with the tags still on. Credit card bills piled up on her father's desk. The household staff quit one by one due to delayed wages. Once numbering more than 10, only the cook and Luisana remained. Only Luisana stayed out of concern for Daniela. She never mentioned the unpaid salaries and instead took even greater care of the little girl. "That child is innocent," Luisana confided to the cook. "She's the only light in this house." One night, Daniela accidentally overheard her parents' conversation in the study. Standing in the dark hallway, the little girl froze. $5 million, that would solve everything, but could we really? "We have no choice. If we don't come up with $1 million by the weekend, it's all over." "But she's just..." "Shut up. This is because of your reckless spending." They were talking about her life insurance policy. Daniela didn't understand the meaning of the conversation, only the strange tension in her parents' voices. It left an unease in her young heart. Her nightmares became more frequent. On the night of December 22nd, her father suddenly announced a family trip to Rocky Mountain National Park. "That's right, Daniela. Tomorrow, there's a surprise for you." Her father's eyes had an empty gleam. Her mother handed her a brand new camera with a tense expression. It was an expensive SLR camera, straight out of the box. "This will make wonderful memories." Daniela had no idea about the cruel plan hidden behind those words. The snowy scene visible from the mansion windows blanketed everything in silence like a pure white coffin. On what would be her last night, Daniela dreamed of making the gingerbread house she had promised to build with Luisana. December 23rd, 1993, 7:15 a.m., the sun began to rise over Rocky Mountain National Park, Colorado. The summit of Flat Top Mountain was covered in 12 inches of fresh snow from the night before. In the glacial cold, the morning light illuminated the Sterling family's black Mercedes-Benz. Jonathan was at the wheel, Elizabeth in the passenger seat, and Daniela in the back. It was a rare family outing, something that hardly ever happened. "Are you cold?" Her mother's voice trembled strangely. Despite wearing her new mink coat, she was shivering abnormally. "I'm fine, Mom," Daniela replied, her voice muffled behind the scarf Luisana had knitted especially for her the night before. "But why are we leaving so early?"
"You'll see a beautiful view," her father answered, his voice unnaturally cheerful. His knuckles were white as he gripped the steering wheel. "You'll be able to take pictures of the sunrise."
The car ascended the mountain road. Daniela held her new camera carefully. The lens had an anti-evoke coating, the high-sensitivity film was already loaded, and the batteries were fresh. A perfectly prepared camera. 8:30 a.m. They arrived at a lookout point nearly 3,000 meters above sea level. Not a single car was in the parking lot. The Sterling family stepped out into the icy wind. "There's a scenic spot around here," her father said, unfolding a map. He left the marked trail and headed down a narrow path with "Do Not Enter" signs. Her mother followed silently. "Dad, isn't this dangerous?" "Don't worry, Daniela," her father's voice echoed in the frozen air. "You're a special girl." They stopped at a spot about 500 meters off the trail. A deep canyon stretched out before them. Standing at the edge of the cliff, the bottom was invisible. "Let's take a picture here." Her father took the camera. "I'll take it. Daniela, step a little closer to the edge." The girl obeyed, moving closer to the cliff's edge. The cold wind stung her cheeks. Her mother stood several meters behind, looking away. That was when Daniela noticed something in her father's eyes. It wasn't love or kindness. It was emptiness. "You're worthless, Daniela." Her father's voice had changed. It was now cold and mechanical. "But this will fix everything." A sudden impact, the sharp sensation of being pushed from behind. Daniela's body tilted slowly forward. She heard her mother scream in the distance as she fell toward the canyon floor. Strangely, time seemed to move in slow motion. The gingerbread house she had promised to make with Luisana. She would never be able to make it now. Thoughts like these crossed her mind. "Help!" With a silent scream, Daniela's body tumbled down the snow-covered cliff. Just before she hit the brush 30 meters below, the camera strap caught on a protruding rock. The shutter clicked. The flash fired as Daniela's consciousness began to fade. The intermittent clicks of the shutter continued, almost as if calling for help. Ranger Mateo noticed the flashes about 40 minutes after the incident. "Karen, something's flickering over there." The Wilsons, a husband and wife ranger team, were on their regular patrol. The instincts of the veteran ranger told Mateo something was wrong. Could it be a person? The rescue was extremely challenging, freezing temperatures, steep slopes, deep snow, but Mateo and Karen didn't give up. Using safety ropes, they carefully descended the treacherous terrain. When they confirmed Daniela was alive, they immediately called for rescue services. "She has a pulse!" Karen shouted, "but her body is too cold!" The sound of helicopter blades grew louder. During the 15 minutes it took the rescue team to arrive, Karen kept the girl warm with her own body heat. The diagnosis? Severe fractures in her right arm and leg, critical hypothermia, bruises and abrasions all over her body, and profound psychological trauma. At the Memorial Hospital emergency room, as doctors and nurses carried out desperate life-saving measures, the initial police investigation began. "She fell accidentally while trying to take a picture," her father explained. The detective felt something was off in Jonathan's account. However, without the victim's testimony, no witnesses at the scene, and insufficient physical evidence, the investigation stalled. 48 hours after the incident, the Sterling couple had vanished. The mansion was abandoned. Debt collectors descended upon it, but no one knew where the couple had gone. From her hospital room, Daniela stared blankly at the snowy landscape outside. Her memories were fragmented. She couldn't recall the events of that day clearly. Only her father's final words echoed relentlessly in her mind. "You're worthless." Those words would alter the course of her life forever. January 1994, Room 412, Memorial Hospital of Colorado. Even with the arrival of the new year, Daniela's emotional wounds ran deep. Snow continued to fall outside her window, covering the world in white. On the hospital television, news about the disappearance of the Sterling family replayed again and again. "Shall we get some fresh air today?" Karen's voice broke the stillness of the hospital room. At 52, Karen had visited Daniela almost daily since the rescue. Her husband, Matteo, also stopped by whenever his work allowed. The couple had no children of their own. "We've applied to become your foster parents," Karen said one day, gently holding Daniela's hand. "If you'd like that." Tears welled up in Daniela's eyes. Karen had already prepared everything to welcome her into their home. A cozy, single-story house in the suburbs of Aspen, a spacious room just for her, a study filled with bookshelves, and a small sewing room. "I spent 15 years building my career as a buyer for Burdorf Goodman's luxury boutique in New York," Karen explained one evening, stroking Daniela's hair as she shared her story. "But I missed mountain life, so I moved here with my husband, who's a ranger. Still, I've never lost my passion for fashion." By spring, Daniela began her new life with her new family. Emotional healing was a long and arduous journey, marked by nights filled with nightmares and sudden bouts of anxiety. But Karen and Matteo watched over her recovery with patience, never pressuring her. "No one is worthless," Karen often reminded her. "You have unlimited potential." With twice-weekly therapy sessions and monthly psychiatric appointments, Daniela slowly began to open her heart. She found particular solace in Karen's sewing room, which became her emotional refuge. "This fabric is beautiful," Karen said one afternoon, showing Daniela various textiles and vintage dresses from her collection. "Touch it. Can you feel the texture of the silk?" On her 13th birthday, Daniela received her first sewing machine. From that moment on, her talent blossomed. She repaired old dresses, transforming them into new designs. Under Karen's guidance, she eagerly absorbed everything, from the basics to professional techniques. In high school, she founded a fashion club and began designing dresses for her classmates' prom events. Her reputation spread by word of mouth, and orders started coming in from neighboring schools. "This is natural talent," Karen said, her eyes filled with pride as she looked at Daniela's work. "I can say that with absolute certainty based on my experience." At 16, Daniela started working part-time at a local boutique. Product selection, display, customer service, it was all new and fascinating. She found particular joy in seeing her customers' eyes light up. "I get to be part of special moments in people's lives," she said one day, her gaze now free from the shadows that once clouded it. After graduating from high school, Daniela attended Parsons School of Design in New York, majoring in fashion design and business. With Karen's connections, she gained internships at renowned brands while still in college. "The world is full of beauty waiting to be discovered," Daniela would say as she continued sketching her dreams in her notebook. In her third year of university, a decision loomed. New information had arrived from the private investigator who had spent years searching for her parents. They had been spotted in Mexico. But Daniela simply replied, "I'm no longer chasing the past," and canceled the contract with the detective. "I have reasons to move forward now." After graduation, Daniela gained steady experience. Buyer assistant at a prestigious department store, brand merchandiser, manager at a select boutique. Each role became part of her learning journey. At 22, she opened her own store in a small alley in New York, Soho Starling, proudly using the surname her father had left her. On opening day, Karen and Matteo cried in front of the store, "You've done so well!" Daniela's keen eye for beauty was undeniable. A blend of vintage and modern design, the special allure of unique pieces, meticulous attention to customer care. The store quickly gained fame, and soon celebrities were frequent visitors. At 25, she opened her second store. At 27, her third. By the time she opened her fourth store in Beverly Hills at 28, annual sales had surpassed $10 million. Vogue and other prestigious fashion magazines hailed her as an icon of the new fashion era. Autumn 2021, Daniela wore a white stole that Karen had knitted for her. In the drawer of the counter, she carefully kept the camera from that fateful day. She was about to receive unexpected visitors. Soft music filled the store as champagne was served to glamorous guests. Daniela smiled calmly. Karen's words echoed in her heart. "You have infinite worth." At 328 Rodeo Drive, Beverly Hills, Starling's 5th anniversary party was in full swing. The store was packed with Los Angeles celebrities, and the golden champagne bubbles sparkled under the lights. Now 36 years old, Daniela wore a black pantsuit, the white cashmere stole from Karen draped elegantly over her shoulders. She looked stunning and sophisticated. The New York Times had dubbed her the new Empress of Fashion.
Starling's 5th anniversary party, Miss Sterling. What a wonderful celebration. Valentina Lauren, a loyal client, approached Daniela. Valentina had been an idol among socialites, someone Daniela's mother had admired in the past.
As always, your sense of style is truly exceptional. Daniela smiled gracefully. The store's decorations, designed especially for the occasion, reflected her aesthetic sensibility, a mix of champagne, gold, and midnight blue tones. The soft light from vintage chandeliers illuminated the space, creating an atmosphere of perfect harmony. Shortly after 3 p.m., the shop bell rang. At the threshold stood an aged and weary couple, a man in a cheap suit and a woman who had lost all traces of her former elegance, Jonathan and Elizabeth Sterling. Time had shown them no mercy over the past 28 years. Their appearance bore the marks of deep wrinkles and decades of wear. The dignity they once carried had vanished entirely. Elizabeth glanced around the store, a mix of nostalgia and envy in her eyes as she took in the luxurious surroundings. "What a lovely boutique," she remarked to a nearby staff member. "I wonder who owns this wonderful place." From behind the counter, Daniela watched them. A whirlwind of emotions churned within her, anger, sadness, and a strange sense of relief. Slowly, she approached them and, with a calm voice, asked, "Do you remember me?"
28 years of running had taken a toll on the Sterlings. After fleeing Colorado, they had lived in Mexico, Brazil, Argentina, and elsewhere, using false names and engaging in borderline fraudulent businesses. The life they had adopted to escape debt collectors had only led to new debts, trapping them in a vicious cycle of constant flight. Now, upon learning of their daughter's success through the newspapers, they had arrived with one last hope, a new scheme to exploit the boutique's reputation to deceive wealthy clients. But the Daniela standing before them now exceeded any expectations they might have had. "Welcome," Daniela said with a soft smile. She turned to her staff and gave a firm instruction, "Please escort these guests to the VIP lounge." Jonathan and Elizabeth were led to a luxurious leather sofa. Daniela herself poured champagne for them, her movements deliberate and composed. Once they were seated, she broke the silence. "Do you remember that day?" Elizabeth's hand trembled as she held the glass. "I remember everything," Daniela continued. "I still have the photographs from that camera." She pulled out a report from the private investigator Karen had hired years earlier. It detailed her parents' new fraudulent schemes and included photographs as evidence, images that the detective had kept secret for 20 years. "But I won't take this to the police." Jonathan and Elizabeth held their breath. Daniela's words came slowly, deliberate. "The fact that your lives have lost everything truly valuable is punishment enough." Elizabeth broke into tears while Jonathan buried his face in his hands. "Please leave now. Don't ever come near this boutique or my life again," Daniela said, her voice steady but firm. "If you do that, I won't use this evidence." It was a definitive end. After the couple left, Daniela stood by the window watching the bustle of Rodeo Drive. Among the crowd, she saw the unsteady figures of her parents fading into the distance. Then a familiar voice broke the silence behind her. "Are you okay?" She turned to see Karen and Mateo, who had been with her through every major milestone in her life. Both wore expressions of concern. Daniela took a deep breath, then gave them a broad smile. "Yes, I'm okay now." She walked back to the counter, opened a drawer, and pulled out the camera from that day. Holding it carefully, she stroked it gently, as though touching a distant memory before placing it back. "Because now, I have my true family." A new chapter had begun. The celebration continued late into the night. Daniela felt a sense of freedom like she had never known before. Outside, the nighttime view of Los Angeles sparkled like a treasure chest of jewels, and the warm embrace of the white shawl Karen had knitted wrapped around her heart. The 8-year-old girl who had once fallen into the abyss had risen to this moment. With soft jazz music filling the boutique, Daniela raised her glass, toasting to new beginnings. After 28 years, she had finally found her freedom.